Hello, everyone, and welcome to the WSSEA 2024 fall season. We've got one game left before playoffs. That's going to be a crazy wild card game here, for you in just a few moments. We got an exciting best of three. But first, I've got to introduce this legend to my digital left over here. Kaizo, how are we feeling, my friend?
I'm feeling great, man. I am very privileged to be back here on the desk with you. It's been quite a minute since I've gotten the opportunity and the honor to work with Mr. Hot Sauce, so I am definitely dialed in here, and I'm ready for some Overwatch action, baby. And I am also going to be taking very careful attention to make sure that every single one of these pronunciations are Wapato, Mr. Hot Sauce.
That's right. Wapato versus Rogers. Both of these teams 4-2, so fighting for that final playoff spot here in a best of three. And last I heard, we are going to be starting out on Kings Row, so a map that everybody is very comfortable with. And, we're all pretty familiar with it as well, so it should be exciting.
Yeah, definitely going to something that you're pretty familiar with is, I think, the direction you want to be going in here, especially if you have your playoff hopes on the line. You don't want to throw too much caution to the wind, and sticking to what you know and what you've probably practiced a whole lot more is, I think, the correct direction for them to be going in here.
Yeah, well, before we get going, while we got just a free moment here, I do want to give a huge shout out to Zotac Gaming for powering today's stream. Thanks to their incredible support, we're able to bring this broadcast to everybody here today across the kind of scholastic esports scene. So let's make sure we show our appreciation to Zotac and give them a shout out on social media. You can do that by using hashtag powered by Zotac or hashtag ZotacUSA as well. And I'm excited for this one. I know obviously we won't see the new tank today, but Overwatch testing out a new tank this weekend as well. And just a lot of fun things going on in the Overwatch scene.
Yeah, we're going to be sticking with what we know a little bit better, though, so no new interesting toys. We're still going to be sticking with the Mauga, the Orisa, the Sigma, all that fun stuff that you're already pretty accustomed to, and I think that's probably for the better, Hot Sauce. I don't think that either one of these teams would have been super excited to have a monkey wrench thrown in the plans here at the later stages of the season. I think that, I don't know if you mentioned this yet, both of these teams 4-2, so both on pretty even footing here, making sure that every single step that they take is going to be in the right direction here in the playoff season. And I'm bursting with excitement, man. I haven't gotten to do Overwatch in just a minute, so this is going to be a blast.
Yeah, and again, unfortunately, a lot of the games we've seen this season have kind of been 2-0, but with both of these teams having a very even record here, hopefully it'll be an exciting one. Maybe we can go all the way to the best of three as well. And as we get loaded for that game, I will take a moment to thank LandFest as well for continuing to build healthy communities through gaming with 23 different chapters across 18 states, over 150 different events a year. So we strongly encourage everybody to go to landfest.com, check out the chapters near you, and hopefully we can find an event near you as well.
And I want to bounce back, actually, and go to that, you were mentioning the Zotac. It is the giving season, man. If you are looking for an upgrade on your PC, or if somebody that you know is also maybe looking to make some modifications here in the holiday season, go to zotac.gg, zotac.com. Make sure that you direct all of your best attention their way, because they make some great high-quality stuff there, and you know that you would want to get that in your build if at all possible.
Hey, that's a great point. That almost segues me to our last sponsor as well, or an additional sponsor is Seattle Built PCs, and they've had we got to thank them for their continued support through many seasons here at WSSEA as well. Seattle Built PCs are custom PC builders trusted by the pros since 2020, so you definitely can't go wrong with Seattle Built PCs as well. Ultimate performance, one-of-a-kind aesthetics, and that small business value. So we certainly appreciate each and every one of our sponsors here today. I know the students do as well, but I'm excited to be able to bring the action here as well and get to showcase what young, great talent we have here across the high school scene.
And it looks like, I think Route 66 is maybe, we got a little sneak peek there, but Route 66, I believe, is going to be the direction we're going in here first. So it's going to be Escort here on game number 1, Hot Sauce, which means that going to be a very different sort of look than you would traditionally think if you were maybe going for a control map starting off. This allows teams to develop momentum and keep that momentum throughout the game. If you have something like a control map, it feels like you're really grounded in one spot and you have to just fend off the wolves from all angles, but you you can really start to get some very both metaphorical and literal momentum with you if you're going on this escort map, if you're on offense, or across the way, obviously on defense. If you can stop that from even unlocking in the first place, we could be in here for a much shorter game than you would really expect.
Yeah, I initially thought maybe heading to Kings Row. I know there was maybe a little bit of discrepancies to work out about what map pool that we were going to be in. But honestly, I see a ton of Kings Row. I would not be disappointed to be heading to Route 66. I personally love this map as well. You start off in that gas station area, eventually getting into a little bit more of that windy western town complex. But there's still long sight lines where that Widow or that Ash is valuable. And then at the end, you get inside in that bunker, and it's a lot more close quarters. There's that one long hallway for a long sight line there to potentially work off of that maybe a Hanzo or something. But again, you get a little bit of everything. The scenery is great. It's aesthetically pleasing to the eyes as well. And so again, if we get Route 66, I would be happy with that.
Yeah, Route 66 has been a favorite for me all the way dating back to the years of old in Overwatch 1. We're still getting word from production now, not quite sure which of these two maps that we're going to be working with, but I do want to touch on what you mentioned about these open sight lines on Route 66, because I do think that's so important to the way that you play this map. You brought up the Hanzo and the Widowmaker, but even things like a Pharah can be very comfortable on this map, just so much space vertically to work with, where obviously if you have a roof above you, some of those sight lines get a little bit cramped. You can't get as much space to work with. But here on Route 66, man, if this is the direction we're going with, it's going to be a whole lot of different angles to work with. So probably not going to be seeing things like the Reinhardt on this one, just because can't really point the shield in one direction. Going to have a lot more flexibility here if you want to deal with all of the different lines of sight that are going to be coming into, honestly, both the attacking and the defending side.
Yeah, I mean, on top of the lines of sight, you have the different verticalities in this map, which is why people like, Pharah that you had mentioned, as well as Baptista, Diva, anybody that can kind of get up, especially on offense as well. If you're looking to push your opponents off of that high ground, give yourself a little bit of footing. And it's interesting as well. A lot of times we see teams kind of play right up in this first little line, this first little pathway here, which is where I like to play as well. But a lot of times we also see some teams more recently playing back on gas station, kind of giving up a little bit of that first space and playing that choke point of that corner, which it is a little bit longer of a spawn walk back for that offense. But and it works for some people, but I still like that kind of more aggressive, in your face. Let me, prevent as much space as possible from being taken.
Yeah, definitely. If you can get up there and stop them from comfortably getting out of the spawn point, because that's really your first big choke point on a map like Route 66, is preventing the enemy from taking position. You have that first initial lead-in where the paths sort of branch off to the left and right, but up until that point, you have to walk down the same hallway every time. You can have a Widow staring down that area the entire time. You can have the Torbjorn turret just set up there waiting for anybody to come through. I think that you would ideally want to restrict the movement as much as possible early on, but I do think what you said is totally valid. A lot of teams I've seen backing up a little bit more, forfeiting some of that space just to be able to fight around a different choke point. And I think that is a lot more about team identity than it is map identity, because some teams will like to pin you in your spawn. Some teams maybe have a Call of Duty background. They want to try to spawn camp you, whereas you have other teams that want to play around one individual choke point. And I think that once you get a little bit more distance on you in Route 66, some of the buildings start to open up, the side tunnels go out to the sides, and then you start to have a couple of different angles that people can approach from. That's really when you can have your set kind of play, where this is the kind of thing we do on Route 66 as well as on Kings Row, or as well as on any of these other maps. It feels a lot more like you can put into place a game plan that is replicable across different maps once you forfeit a little bit of that additional space in the beginning.
Yeah, and I think another thing that's maybe just fun about the high school level as well is we don't always see those meta picks coming out. So we see a lot of that comfortability pick as well, whereas but we're just going to stick with this character, or maybe just one or two, because that's what we're really good with, and we're just not quite, maybe as comfortable with playing some of the other characters that might now be meta. But certainly that Brawley comp has been very, very good here, at least in the high school league, when you have the ability for the tank to get in and out. It used to be Lucio. Now we see a lot of Juno there as well.
Sure.
So for me, it's always, I think one of the interesting parts is seeing what characters these students are playing with and what comps that they are running. And not only that, do they switch from map to map as well, or are they able to counter swap and pick throughout the map?
I have actually a lot more experience at the high school level watching these Overwatch games than I do at any other level, and I've seen a lot of internal swapping during these games. A lot of adaptation on the fly, completely shifting the look of the team and just making large-scale team compositions. Like, for example, going from a Reaper to, I don't know, a Pharah will significantly change the landscape of your battlefield, and that seems to be, at least in my experience, what a lot of these high school teams are wont to do is make their adaptations, make their changes before those ultimates start to get online. Because obviously you wait too long, you're leaving value on the table. That ultimate charge is forfeit once you make that swap. But if you can get a concise and very timely switch early on in the game, identify a problem, find a solution, that can be your ticket into the playoffs and grabbing this wild card for yourself.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point too, because at times we've seen maybe teams just waiting a little bit too long because they're so close to that ult, but then they keep going out and they keep dying. They never really get that ult as well. And so sometimes you might be incredibly close to that ult, but if your team is going to get more value as a team, then it is best to just go ahead and switch, which I think is tough. You know, sometimes realizing that that switch should have came out earlier than later can be a tough thing, but that's where that mental aspect of the game comes in as well. You can't let past decisions haunt you, especially while you're already, you know, in a game and only have a few minutes left to make these split-second decisions. So the ability to just GG, go next, power forward is also an incredibly, you know, important aspect that a lot of these students do, you know, possess.
And obviously going the opposite direction, right? If you have that ultimate online and you don't have a good opportunity to use it, like say you're a Kiriko and you've got the ult online, you definitely want to use that when you have a big push coming up. If they're contesting the point that you're defending, or you're trying to get that additional push through a choke point into whatever the next stage of the map might be, you don't necessarily want to burn that ult on just, oh, let's look for a pick on this guy on the right-hand side, then I need to make a swap. Sometimes you really get caught in your own head about, I need to get value out of this, I don't see an opportunity yet, so I have to stick on this character. You don't want to leave that ultimate on the table, so a lot of teams will find themselves just completely stuck in what they've already got underway and don't really feel comfortable making those adaptations. So I'm going to keep my eye on these ultimate timers, these team compositions, and see what kind of assessments that these teams are making, what kind of adaptations we've got.
Yeah, the ult economy is equally as important, and even times we've seen people have their ult and they continue to hold on to it looking for that perfect moment, but it just never shows up and they never use it. I'm more of a fan of just using it shortly after you get it, even if you only find one or two picks or you solo ult someone. Any value that you can get out of it that will potentially lead to a team fight being won, and then work, you know, back toward getting multiple ults, you know, in a half or whatever it might be. So I'm a big fan of using it when you got it, but we got about 35 seconds on the clock till this one starts, and we got to take a little sneak peek at the compositions here.
And I'm going to have to eat my words here, man, because it looks like Zev from the Rogers Pirates is going to be going in the direction of that Reinhardt, and you called out the Juno that we've seen a lot more of on these support styles, shifting away from things like the Lucio and giving a bit more verticality, a little bit more flexibility to the way that you're doing your healing. And across the way, it's actually going to be this Winston is going to be the tank for Wapato, which gives them a very interesting dynamic. It is a very aggressive tank, allows them to get in and out very effectively, a whole lot of mobility, and Blank on this Widowmaker is, for my money, going to be the guy to look for. If you have to have one person that you keep your eyes on a map like this one, like Route 66, where we talked about these very big sight lines, it's got to be somebody playing Widowmaker that you're going to be putting your focus on.
Now we'll see if Widow can maybe find a way to get Mercy out the sky as Reinhardt continues to power forward. Certainly has been a little bit more of a viable asset lately, but again, tough in some of these situations, especially if they're able to melt that shield quickly. DMC dangerously low, though. Moon as well going to have to back off a bit. They have that Venture, able to kind of traverse a lot of this ground, but Takashi finding the first one onto the tank. Zeb will get real Steve as well. Zen finding a piece of the action, and now everybody getting involved. And with that, an early bit of success here.
Wow, Takashi gets one as well there, and it's a 4-for-0, nice and clean in favor of, Rogers Pirates, which does allow them to get some more momentum behind them, push this payload back a little bit further. This is your ideal choke point if you want to be defending around it. This bridge area can be so difficult to breach, especially with a shield character like this Reinhardt. They want to hold this as long as possible.
Now, we talked about those early swaps as well. We see Winston to the wayside. Hawks on the Ramontra, throwing fist and dropping bodies. Finds one. Steve will get another. A bit of back and forth as Cookie. Able to find the res, but quickly traded back as Blank on that Junkrat now. Having a little bit more success. Able to drop Mercy with a support down. Things could be tougher, but Zeb.
There we go.
The ult comes out, but immediately eliminated here as well. And not much value to be had from the Earth Shatter.
Yeah, you want to talk about ult economy, man. He got so many people with the Earth Shatter, but just no teammates nearby. Everybody else got cleaned out before he got that cooldown online. Doesn't matter how many people you bring down if nobody's there to finish them off, and Blank will finish one off there, gets Takashi. Lily does get resurrected by Cookie Master, though, so that does give them a little bit more time, a little bit more space to work with. They're really trying to hold this bridge area, not allow them in, but health bar getting very low here. Zen falls.
Yeah, DMC Hawks here has been great on this swap. I mean, you nailed it before, making, kind of being aware and finding that switch early if you're able to. Off the Winston, onto the Ramontra, having a ton of success, but Lily, Takashi, both finding picks here as well. And now with just 2.6 meters, they find themselves a bit staggered. They're going to have to regroup here.
Yeah, Reaper going to go ahead and back up with the rest of the boys and really try to hold down this point. You mentioned it, 2.6 meters, man. It's not long to go, but they're not going to be forfeiting any inch of that space anytime soon. Ramontra does almost have the ult up here, and he will get it now alongside that junk to play with.
Plenty of tools to play with here at the moment. Ramontra has that Annihilation. Can't think of a better name for an ult, and it's going to be popped out right here. Hawks looking to go toe-to-toe and throw some bows around the point for the Junkrat with a Riptire finding Zeb. Zeb, who is swapped to the Ramontra as well, but without their tank, it's going to be tough here. Rogers has to consider falling back and looking to regroup.
Now they're going to be pushing up here on this cliffside. They've got it through that choke point of the bridge. They've opened up the next phase. They just have to sneak their way in. Reaper trying to play some distraction here on the right-hand side, draw as much aggro as possible, has some help with him, and everybody congregating up here on this right-hand side. Zen gonna have to back up here, throws the flashbang, but here comes Venture trying to go for this kill, won't be able to find it.
Yeah, unfortunately not able to get that one. Venture has been very deadly this entire season as well. A lot of students really utilizing the mobility and the power of Venture. That ult is hard to deal with at times as well. Now up into the face, as we see kind of fighting back and forth. DMC Hawks is dangerously low on the Ramontra. The tank trying to stay up. Blank low as well. The supports working overtime, but Zeb, Blank both finding picks here as well, and still a 4v4, but not for long. Zen finds a pick, and Cookie will get a res.
Zeb has the ult online. Annihilation is ready to go. The Caspi player, Zen, also, Zeb and Zen, wow, just realized that. Doesn't matter, they've both got cooldowns ready, and they both aren't going to need them as they successfully wipe out the side of Wapato on the defense here and buy themselves a bit more breathing room. This is a bit of an awkward spot for them to try to defend just because it's right on the other side of that choke point. There's only a couple of different ways that they could get in, but Real Steve already taken a spill.
Yeah, it's going to fall to Zen here on that Cassidy, who's been doing a great job on the hit scan. Reaper now up into the face, trying to find some damage. The shields will be popped up, and now they can hear that Riptire on the hunt, dancing around, taking all the alternate locations, but Zeb doesn't bite, able to find the pick here as well. The Riptire, unfortunately for them, gets no value. Lily's going to find the pick onto the support, and with that, maybe a little bit of success here for Team Rogers.
Yeah, just a great job there from Rogers, recognizing the threat potential of that Riptire and making sure that they didn't fall to it. But hang on, Zeb's going ballistic here with the Annihilation. Gets 2, gets 3, does end up getting his own demise spelled as well, but he got plenty of value out of that ultimate.
Yeah, able to find quite a few, and now Cookie quick to find the res as well, and this is where Mercy can be so valuable. Yeah, you do have to kind of be stuck with some big single target heals, but those reses are absolutely huge in a time like that, saving that walk back from spawn, especially from the tank. And now Zeb finding another one. Takashi eventually trading it back. The res is down, and Rogers continuing to have some success. They really stalled out Wapato at the moment.
And they haven't been able to breach this choke point here. Zeb's doing great work on this Ramontra. Actually, both of these Ramontra players seem to be getting a pretty consistent amount of value here, but it is only going to be a matter of time before the regroup comes in. You can see Wapato starting to play a little bit slower, waiting for the rest of the team to come back up. Their tank is very, very low. Zeb on about 50%, but it looks like they want to push in here.
Yeah, pushing in, but Zen on high noon. The Deadeye finding two. Takashi with a Death Blossom will bloom. Just nothing there as he does pick up the lamp. Zen finding the tank, though, after the damage has been done. And Takashi, again, Reaper on Reaper. So after a very solid initial start here from Wapato, it's been Rogers finding these stops, winning these fights time after time, and time ticking away, not able to get back to the payload in time. So a very good round one here for Rogers High School.
Yeah, absolutely. Rogers looked very good there, and I think that you hit the nail on the head where once we had those longer sight lines that we were talking about that Route 66 has, especially in the early stages, the Widowmaker and things like that looked very good, but it really seemed like once we got into these narrower corridors, Wapato just couldn't find their way through. Rogers did an excellent, or excuse me, Am I saying that right? You're going to have to keep me honest on this one, Hot Sauce.
They're saying what right?
Team names, man. I'm all over my place.
Yeah. We got Rogers there in blue and then Wapato in red there. So sometimes it does get confusing. I mean, there's a beautiful chaos out here in the battlefield here as action's been popping off left and right. And these students certainly looking to showcase the skills here today. DMC has really shown that they're comfortable on multiple different tanks as well. Now we get to see Maga come out, and again, I just love the names for the guns. We got Gunny and Cha-Cha, baby. We're ready for a party.
Yeah, I love watching this Mauga play as well. That zone control from the ultimate is so oppressive, and honestly, so much of that good healing just making him a very effective tank, but he also does incredible damage, and I'm really looking at what the adaptations here are going to be across the way, because I really like the matchup of Ana if you're up against the Mauga. Shutting down that healing can be very oppressive, makes it feel like that character can't get any momentum under them, and I'm gonna be interested to see if they go in that direction. Looks like as of right now, it's just damage all the way across, not a whole lot of utility to be spoken of, but it is giving them some decent distance already.
Yeah, Ana, Junker Queen, there's definitely a few options out there, but DMC already in trouble. Zev finding the pick onto the tank here as well, and some early success as they begin to push this payload, and I thought Maga might be a little bit troublesome for him, but we will see Hawk stick it out for a little bit longer as Zev able to find Mercy, so a bit of a stagger is going to come in here as well, and with that, they should be able to get quite a good first initial push here.
Now, Ramatra very deep here in the enemy backline, has the Pharah on lock. Real Steve will take a spill there. It's Zen that gets the credit, but Zev absolutely sets him up for that one. And what did take the other team a little bit extra time to get through this choke point, going through these longer sight lines, is a very initial breach here from Rogers. They've made great distance in a very small amount of time.
Yeah, Ramatra is doing a great job of being up front and not only applying a lot of damage, but being able to mitigate it here as well. We saw the shield come out, obviously able to change forms, and with Zen finding this first pick on the Real Steve, they continue to find these opportunities where they have that player advantage. We can see Kariko in the back line, but nobody really in contention here. And Zen with a triple kill off the Deadeye. Takashi will find one as well, and it doesn't look like they're slowing down anytime soon.
No, they're going to push straight through that choke point off the back of Zen, getting that huge Deadeye as you mentioned. And you got to keep your eyes on this Cassidy, man. You cannot allow him to sneak in unnoticed, especially when he has that Deadeye available. He gets so much value out of that ultimate and really single-handedly pushes them through to the next stage of this payload. If it weren't for that Deadeye, I think we're still probably trying to push through that bridge section for another couple of minutes, but Zen with a fantastic find there.
Yeah, and Zen making it look much easier than it is. I never have that much success with a Deadeye.
Absolutely.
Takashi finding two. Zev throwing fist right up here in front of all the action. The annihilation will come out, but it's only good for one as Hawk's able to find the exchange and win the battle of the tanks. Moondust will pick up on Takashi here as well, and it's pretty much do or die at this point. It's a last stand and 4 minutes still on the clock.
Yeah, there's a lot of time to work with, man. Wapato do have the chokehold of the payload right now, and this was where across the way Rogers did find that this was the most difficult area to push through. Right after that bridge seemed to be the most difficult point. Now we've got to swap up to that Mei from Zen, so it's drastically different look from the Cassidy, but already gotten some good value out of it.
Already gotten some good value. Zev finding blank here early. Takashi has the Death Blossom here as well. Looking to work into position. The barrage will come down, but no value from that as well. Zen on the main now has sniped Real Steve out of the sky. Zen pumping off, showing he can do it on multiple characters. DMC will eventually get a trade back, and now running it down with a hailstorm of bullets. The Gatling guns are being let loose.
He jumps in as well, trying to buy as much space as possible. Does fall quickly, though. Zen and Zev, each good for one. Cookie Master will find one as well. Resurrection in place onto Lily, and it's actually going in the opposite direction. They successfully pushed through that last point. We had 4 minutes left, and it only took them 1 to find their way through.
Yeah, good solid fight there from both squads, but Rogers coming out on top. And again, I thought they were going to be able to bring it back there a minute. DMC on that Maga had a lot of success, but we do get to take another look at the play of the game. We already know what that one's going to be. The Dead Eye, the High Noon coming out with a triple kill. Takashi finding the 4th and really just securing that first checkpoint with a lot of extra time in the bank.
Yeah, and they made it look very concise there as well. I don't want to say easy, because it definitely did look like there was a bit of a struggle there, and there was a lot of those adaptations that we were mentioning. You brought up previously all of the different tanks that DMC was cycling through. We got to see a bunch of different looks out of him, but also Zev on all of these different characters. I mean, you don't typically think of Mei as a precision shooter character in the same way that you would think of like things like that Cassidy, but he was popping through at the headshots, getting that good utility from things like the wall and the slow, but also finding those long-range shots. That's what I think really separates a good Mei player from a great Mei player, having that additional step to say, I'm not just utility man, I will do this big damage if you're going to stand still. If you're going to hang out and fair ult in the air, I will put an icicle directly between your eyes.
Yeah, I think a good Mei is so much fun to watch because there is so much different ability there, whether you're isolating the fights with the wall, slowing down some of that potential with the left click, or sniping with the right click as well. There's just so much versatility that can be utilized with her. And again, super fun to watch when you get to see someone who's talented and can really showcase all the abilities and skills of Mei. And certainly doing that there in map number 1. I mean, Wapato looked very good initially coming out in those first few moments, but I think once Rogers locked in, Wapato didn't quite have an answer. So some teams are a little better on escort than they are maybe control or things like that. Sure. So I do believe we might be heading to control next. Of course, because Wapato did lose, they would then get to choose that map as well. So they can go kind of more toward that comfortable pick for them.
Yeah, and they're going to have to find something a little bit more comfortable, because it did look like they really started to struggle, especially around those claustrophobic choke points on that map. They looked very good once they had a bit more space to work with, but once things were much more up close, it's a lot more reaction time as opposed to planning. You don't have a whole lot of time to decide what you're going to do. It's really just working off of reflexes, and it seemed like Rogers were a lot better at those snap decision, fast twitch muscle kind of movements in those fights, where you go straight through the choke point, immediately into the enemy backline, and you have to make decisions very quickly and very effectively. I think that Rogers demonstrated they're very capable of that. They're very comfortable with doing that. They had a lot of very good, controlled, very concerted pushes working together as a team, whereas Wapato seemed to be a bit on edge and really not sure of themselves when it comes to what direction are we going to be holding, who's going to be holding this angle, who's going to be dealing with, for example, the Cassidy. Do we know where he's at? Do we know if he has that Deadeye, that High Noon available? Seems like some of those questions were just a little bit too unanswered there from Wapato, but once you have this moment to take a breath, get a little bit of additional time to determine what kind of adaptations you want to make going into Game 2, this can be your reset point where you realize, all right, we gave up the first map, that's all right, we just need to make sure that we really bring things home here in Game number 2.
Yeah, and the team synergy for Rogers, I feel like Zev and Zen probably play together both in school and out of school. I don't know if it's just the names having that little iteration there, but I feel like, they do everything together. They're on the soccer team together, whatever it might be, but certainly showcasing some very good team synergy. And again, we saw moments of greatness from Wapato as well, but I think it was just that consistent gameplay, being able to win consistent fights consecutively as well. And so Rogers is doing a little bit better job of that on Route 66, but that's why we love a best of 3. Plenty of time now for Wapato to turn it around here in map number 2 and hopefully extend us into a map number 3.
Yeah, and I don't want to preach my own narrative here onto these teams, but it really did seem to me like Wapato's shining moments were when they could take a deep breath, make some plans, and use all of their ultimates together. Because there were a bunch of different times in that first game where Wapato presses all of the nuclear buttons all at the same time, and then they're just standing on the payload, and there's nobody from Rogers even close by. A lot of these skirmishes seem to be going in the direction of Rogers, but that set play that I was talking about before the game started, when you have that prior planning, when you have that communication and coordination, that seems to be where Wapato shined the brightest. So I'd like to see a little bit more of that kind of coordinated set play here on the control map. You do have a little bit more time to work with just because you know exactly where people are going to be coming into. You can hold down and as opposed to having to make these constant adjustments, shifting back, shifting forward, coming up on different angles. This is, in my opinion, where Wapato could look much better than on the previous map.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly an opportunity for them to showcase some of these skills. Antarctic Peninsula, I do believe, is where we're going. So a lot of fun sub-maps here on Antarctic Peninsula. For me, again, I think it's going to be interesting, or I want to see what team comps that we're going to go with. Are we going with what we just had on Route 66? Are we mixing it up? We saw DMC able to do that, but I felt like we didn't quite get as much value out of the Reaper as what we saw on the other side of things. So hopefully we can find something here that works with this comp, maybe something a little brawly in your face and able to get back as well. But I mean, I feel like that first game was much closer than the scoreboard would tell, even though Rogers was able to pull it out pretty quickly. But I'm hoping that Wapato will be able to battle back here in map 2.
And I do think that you're probably right to point out the brawliness of it, especially on Antarctic Peninsula. I think that characters like the ones that we've seen so far from Zen and from DMC, like the Ramatra, we've seen the Mauga as well from them, the Reinhardt, maybe not the Reinhardt, but the other two for sure, I think that are the kinds of picks that you want to be going into this next set with. I think that Orisa probably one that I'd throw in that conversation as well, something that penetrates very well, can just break onto the point or push enemies back if they attempt to push in on the point when you're defending. These are the sorts of picks that you are probably right to identify as the very brawly style, but what can be incredibly effective here on Antarctic Peninsula.
All right, here we go. Just 20 seconds on the clock before they can both head to the point. This is an interesting submap as well because you have that high ground just over the point. And if you can be that team to take the point first, then everything kind of happens around that. If you can build that early percentage, play off of the high ground here, you can definitely set yourself up, or your team rather, to have a little bit more of an advantageous play.
And I do think that trying to hold down this point because of how much verticality there is much more difficult than it is to push your way onto it. If you can successfully defend all of the entrances, don't get me wrong, that feels very good because somebody has to come through a hallway, through a narrow corridor, you know exactly where they're going to be. But if you're standing in that pit and taking fire from all sides, from all these different angles, it can feel very overwhelming and very challenging for them to successfully find a way to push everybody back and defend all of their angles. So I think that, especially on a map like this, Hot Sauce, whoever gets this initial claim on the control point is probably going to be the one that I would say is favored to take this one away.
Yeah, I could most likely agree with that as well. Not only do we see some swaps coming out from characters, but from roles as well. DMC now on the DPS. Real Steve swapping over to the tank on that Sigma, which I'm a huge fan of Sigmas as well. We do see a Lucio coming out this time as well. Some early picks from Zen to the Moira here. Leo finding a couple of their own, and maybe some new members coming on the roster here as well.
Trade out there from the Cassidy, one each, and it's going to be a contested point here. Moira's going to have to face off against this Reaper, and it is not going to look good for him. They're still trying to take down the rest of the members on this point, trying to clear that one out, and they do end up grabbing that one successfully. So Rogers are going to be the ones that manage to secure this point first, and now the question is, where are they going to play defense? Do you want to try to defend this pit, or are you going to play very aggressively up here around these choke points? Looks like it's going to be the second one as they push their way in through this corridor. They're just going all the way balls to the wall.
Yeah, I think that's a smart decision as well. You just play off the high ground, you be aggressive, you kind of push them back to their spawn. Any more percentage that you can continue to eat up while winning or sustaining these fights is only going to be beneficial, but forget about sustaining. From Zen to Zev, a bunch of kills coming out here as well. I think TNH got one as well there on the Lucio, but again, they continue to win these battles. They find themselves in these player advantage moments, and then they just sit here and eat up the percentage. So Rogers, even though they're 4-2, I'd like to see the two teams that beat them, because they're looking like the team to beat here at the moment.
I think that would be a scary sight, man, especially with all the great value they've gotten out of these Reinhardt ults so far, and DMC going to be trying to find a pick here, can't quite find the last shot, very deep now, contested by 3, and DMC will end up taking a spill against TNH, who does find another one. In fact, Real Steve also takes a spill to the support. Shoutouts to my healers everywhere.
Yeah, you know, supports often don't get enough credit, but we've seen some crazy ones throughout the entirety of this regular season as well, from Lucio to Moira, and obviously Juno now being a very big asset amongst the players here in the game. So kind of even taking the place of Lucio a little bit. But take a look at the alt economy, and it's going to be favoring Rogers here as well.
They are going to have to use something pretty pretty big here if they're going to successfully breach this one. Takashi does end up finding his way on here with that Death Blossom. It'll find another one as well. Moondust takes a spill, doesn't need the ult there, just the shotguns will be enough. And it's a Cassidy versus Cassidy on the outside. The flashbang will get the kill there. Zen is looking phenomenal on this Cassidy, and I'll say it, man, he put DMC in his place there.
Yeah, you know, just playing lights out. They showed it in the first one, and now here in control, 100-0 on this first sub map as well, which is can be a little bit difficult. We saw Leo on that Moira, and as soon as they pop the Coalescence, Rogers doing a great job of the target acquisition. The team communication must be on point, because they immediately dropped Moira before she was able to get any value out of that ult. So great situational awareness coming out of Rogers High School at the moment here, and now just one away from breaking out the broom, sweeping it up, and clinching that final playoff spot.
And talking about supports, man, we brought up TNH a little bit earlier, but I do think Lily deserves a shout out on this Juno as well. You mentioned earlier that seeing a little bit less Lucio, a little bit more Juno as the meta progresses, and Lily has definitely looked very comfortable in this one. It's a bit of a quieter character as compared to something like the Lucio, but very effective nonetheless.
Very effective. I mean, the whole team just playing very well together, a cohesive unit, firing on all cylinders, as Takashi has been a menace out here on the battleground. Blank will eventually extinguish the flame that has been Zen on that Cassidy, and a couple early picks as Zev went down as well. And with that, potentially they have an opportunity to find this point, but it is going to go the other direction somehow anyway, and we still see a swap from Zeb over to the Ramatra.
Yeah, going back to what worked for him a little bit earlier on, and they've got to find an answer for Wapato to this Takashi Reaper, because he is feasting on their backline every single one of these fights. He gets another one there onto the Junkrat, and he's not done yet, pushing forward even deeper. TNH will get credit with that one, but you know who had their name all over it.
Yeah. It just doesn't stop. Zen picking up DMC, who's now swapped to the Bastion. TN getting involved, finding the tank, who's Real Steve. Moondust will go down as well, and it looked like Wapato was about to be able to break in. They found that pick onto the tank, onto the Cassidy, but unfortunately not able to capture the point. And again, look at all of this space that's being taken here as they continue. Now almost 50% already here on the point. And
you have to make a decision here if you're Wapato. You cannot afford to make any swaps after this point forward, because you're gonna need these ultimates if you're gonna want to breach this point successfully, and any swaps giving up any more ultimate charge for free could be disastrous for them. Looks like they are gonna try to push in, and Zev does get very low, but TNH and Takashi, 3-man Death Blossom there, a full wipe of Wapato.
Just blooming into a team kill there, and with that 72%, Wapato maybe feeling a bit of that pressure. And you know, DMC has an ult to work with, Moondust as well. We will see the Junker Queen come out, but you just wonder if it's maybe too little too late. They're gonna have potentially one fight territory here, and that's really it.
See that Bastion ult there, doesn't get as much value as you'd like. They do successfully bring down the tank though. Zev has fallen and hunting down TNH as well, but Zen is just so clean on this Cassidy, getting picks left and right, finds a soldier, finds the Bastion as well. Nobody will be left standing.
I'm pretty sure that was a Quadra coming out from Zen. A menace putting on a clinic. and another dominating performance as Rogers will take the win and secure their playoff spot. Wapato had a phenomenal regular season and should continue to hold their heads high. Unfortunately, things just didn't go their way here today.
No, they absolutely came up against the unstoppable force that is Rogers, and we'll get another look here at that Death Blossom there at the end. Does manage to get 2 with that one, and we'll find the last couple of shots with the shotgun there. And that really cleaned things up and prevented any momentum from being gained there from Wapato at the end. And big shout-outs to Rogers, man. They seemed like every single player on their team had their individual star moment throughout this one.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to pick an MVP because you were saying everybody's name at one point, whether it was Tien, Zin, Zev, Lily, Takashi, everybody getting involved, coming up with some huge plays to kind of help capitalize and propel themselves into that postseason run here. So, again, congratulations to both teams on their regular season run, but unfortunately only one winner today. That's going to be Rogers. They'll get that final wild card spot, but, I mean, if they're the wild card, I'd hate to see who's at top. There's a lot of dangerous teams in this league.
Yeah, I think that you're barking up the right tree, man, because you don't want to look under your bed and find one of these teams that didn't even have to fight for these wild cards. If they're anything like what we just saw from Rogers, then these are going to be well-oiled machines that we're talking about. But once you're at this stage of the season, Hot Sauce, this is playoff time. You need to be firing on all cylinders. You need to be completely lubed up and make sure that everything is ready to go, and you can't afford any moments of weakness. And Wapato, I want to be very, very abundantly clear, did not play poorly throughout this set. They, in fact, played quite well, but Rogers just on a different level in this one. It felt like every single time that there was a scramble situation or there was a backline being dove, it was Rogers diving Wapato, and it was Rogers finding themselves on the upswing as a result of each of these engagements. So credit to Wapato, as you mentioned. I mean, they did absolutely play very well, but Rogers just definitely earned their wild card slot here.
Yeah, definitely well earned. And I mean, because of that, unfortunately, it is going to be short and sweet here tonight. Kaiser just 2-0 and done. But we would like to take a moment again to thank Zotac, Landfest, and Seattle Built PCs for their partnerships here today. We will remind everybody there is one more regular season action happening. That's going to be tomorrow, Splatoon 3 at the same time, 4 p.m. Pacific, before we get ready for those playoffs next week. And of course, we'd like to take a moment to thank everybody behind the scenes here, Connie, Jaden, Taylor, for helping run the stream so smoothly. And of course, you, those of you in chat, whether it's the parents, the students, the teachers, the friends, we certainly appreciate everybody showing up, showing out, and showing their support. But that is all for us tonight. That over there, that legend, that has been Kaizo. My name is Hot Sauce. You all have been absolutely amazing. We hope to see you back here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific for that Splatoon action. But until then, take care and have a wonderful evening, everyone.